like talking about film genres because I think in order to properly analyze media, you have to kind of judge it within the genre that it's in. I hear far too many people go see, like, this happened a lot with my friends after Les Mis came out. Les Mis came out and they're like, I didn't like it. There was too much singing. I'm like, yeah, well, it's a musical, you dumb bitch. You can't go to a scary movie and then complain you didn't like it because you were scared. Fuck off. You have to know what genre you're seeing in order to actually contribute to an analysis. Otherwise, you're just running your big dumb face and no one cares what you say. So we're going to go ahead and dive into some genre history and study, and we are going to start with rom-coms. So rom-coms were once a wildly popular genre, and though they are fewer and farther between now, they are still easy, comfortable watches for many people. Rom-coms, or romantic comedies, at their core are love stories. Essentially, in order for the movie to be considered a romantic comedy, it needs to be more funny than emotional, and the entirety of it needs to hinge upon the love story, which means that if we take the love story aspect out of the narrative, the movie just crumbles and collapses, which shouldn't be too hard for most romantic movies. Now, it's been pointed out by many romantic comedies that by many people watching romantic comedies that sometimes they have unrealistic plots, but more than that, that the relationship that we're watching is more toxic than not. The point of conflict isn't always a misunderstanding, but sometimes it's something that's actually like majorly wrong, normally with the man, and we as the audience are supposed to just ignore that and accept the relationship that we're being shown and accept that it's going to really reach a happy conclusion, because that's how the narrative of these things generally works. Now, as with all film genres, there are subgenres, and one of the rom-coms, as with all film genres, there are subgenres, and one of rom-coms subgenres comes from their original setting as a comedy of manners, screwball comedies, and then films that were just deemed chick flicks, meaning romantic female-oriented movies that aren't necessarily lighthearted or funny. I would call those, we're going to talk a little bit about this later, romantic movies versus romantic comedies. Think Nicholas Sparks, The Notebook, Safe Haven, any of those. They're not necessarily funny, but they're clearly romantic movies that hinge upon the love story that are centered towards women. So we're going to kind of lump all of those in a little bit. Now, timeline-wise, my favorite example of a comedy of manners romantic comedy is one of the first real definers of the genre with It Happened One Night in 1934. This movie won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, and it really kind of started what the rom-com genre would be considered. Now, we kind of jump ahead. There wasn't a whole lot between 1934 and the 1950s, but the 1950s had kind of like a wave of romantic comedy movies. They were filled with fun, sweet romantic movies, many of them brought to us by Queen Marilyn Monroe, with Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1953, 7-Year Itch in 1955, and Some Like It Hot in 1959. Audrey Hepburn was also a queen of romance around the same time period, giving us Roman Holiday in 1953, Funny Face in 1957, and Charade in 1963. Now, I wouldn't really call it a romantic comedy, though romance does play a part, and it draws in more film bros than women. But as we talk about romantic movies, Annie Hall from 1977 has to have a part in the conversation, because a lot of that film explores just relationships in general, romantic relationships, friendship relationships, relationships with yourself. And I think that if you did take any of those away, the story would kind of just crumble. Late 80s, early 90s, we have kind of a bigger wave of what I'm going to call tender romantic comedies. Like, these are, when you think older rom-coms, and you know who's coming to your head: Julia Roberts, Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan lit up the screen with When Harry Met Sally in 1989, Sleepless in Seattle in 1993, which I wouldn't really call a rom-com, but you know, it's just a really sweet, calm, quiet romantic movie. And You've Got Mail in 1998, which definitely counts as a rom-com. More traditional romantic movies like these, and especially Sleepless in Seattle, it's very calm, it's quiet, and it references yet another romantic story in an affair to remember. So the genre starts kind of feeding off of itself. Now, the entire rom-com genre would not be possible without Shakespeare, and as his work continues to be relevant today through film adaptations like 10 Things I Hate About You, which is one of my favorite not only rom-coms but movies of all time, and She's the Man, which is like the ultimate rom-com, especially from millennial childhood. Opposites attract storylines are also wildly popular in the romantic genre, whether it be opposite temperaments, personalities, classes, whatever it is. People want to see different personalities on screen, and that is how we got 5 Cinderella story movies. The Selena Gomez one is the best one. So horror movies have scream queens. Romantic movies have kiss queens. So the leading ladies of romance have been many, but few have reached the status of Julia Roberts, giving us Pretty Woman, 1990, My Best Friend's Wedding, 1997, Runaway Bride, 1999, and Valentine's Day in 2010. Now, after this hard 90s push of romantic comedies, the genre seemed to kind of drop off from the 2000s to now. There have been some romantic comedies, but they certainly didn't reach the heights that they used to. Drew Barrymore might not have starred in as many romantic comedies as some of our other leading ladies, but she most definitely has starred in some of the most iconic ones, like Never Been Kissed and 50 First Dates, which was my favorite movie for just so long. Katherine Heigl has also starred in quite a few romantic comedies, including Knocked Up, The Ugly Truth, 27 Dresses, which I just rewatched. The most recent installments to the genre actually makes it feel like the genre is being reawoken. These last 2 movies have truly felt like everything that the genre is supposed to be. Bros came out last year, and it was simply a queer rom-com. It had all the classic tropes and jokes. The act structure was the same. It was a heartfelt, funny, wonderful movie that has earned its place among rom-coms. And if you didn't see it, do that. And if you don't want to, more recently, No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence cements her place as a romantic lead, and it takes a really sweet twist on the normal romantic comedy structure. Now, rom-coms draw in a lot of people because as films, they've always provided some comfort because you always know how they're going to end. It's always going to be a happy ending, right? They don't often take emotional labor to watch, and they're able to be watched multiple times without much brain power or attention. They're simple movies, but that's why we all watch the Hallmark Channel come Christmas time, when it's 50 of the same movie with the same plot over and over and over again. We know how it's going to end, but it's comfortable and it's relaxing and it's nice. So with a defined genre like rom-coms, we have so many tropes and cliches, right? So first, we have the makeover, right? Because we all know that a woman's desirability is entirely dependent on whether or not she's wearing glasses. Grease, Clueless, The Ugly Truth. These are ones that I would consider occasionally wildly problematic. Not every time, but when it's for the express purpose of changing yourself for a specific person, it's not great. Like Grease. Yes, they changed for each other, but as such, they didn't need to. And if communication was a thing, this whole genre would just cease to exist. But you know what I mean. The next one is best friends, right? Best friends that fall in love. Who hasn't fallen in love with their best friend at some point? It's the plot of quite a few romantic comedies, because at some point, everyone dreams of the person they love just opening their eyes and realizing that they love us back. Doesn't quite happen like that, though. 13 Going on 30, Maid of Honor. Both great, highly entertaining movies, but this trope often comes with a buddy. The collateral damage. In both of these movies, the best friend is getting married, which means in order for there to be a happy ending from the viewpoint of our main character, someone is getting left at the altar, which is just another super brutal thing that we as an audience ignore in the face of a romantic comedy.
I loathe you.
I loathe you.
I loathe you first.
Perhaps everyone's favorite trope, enemies to lovers. Basically the best friends trope, but opposite. Audiences love romantic tension. This person infuriates you and you love it because who wouldn't fall in love with someone that drives them absolutely crazy? The ugly truth, you've got mail, and so many others. It's a very popular trope in books and movies and TV. And as someone who loves Spike and Buffy, I get it, but we need to acknowledge that this trope is also not great. Perhaps the most problematic one, it was a bet, a game, a joke. This is easily the cruelest of the tropes, but it's honestly so funny. Someone takes dating the undateable woman as a challenge. She's all that. 10 things I hate about you. It's so insulting and ridiculous, it's actually comical. And I say this with my whole chest, knowing that 10 Things I Hate About You is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. Of course, we talked about differences, right? Class differences, race differences, whatever. We all know rich people would never marry a poor person. That's why we all dream about it. Movies like Pretty Woman and A Cinderella Story and another Cinderella Story and another Cinderella Story gives us poor bitches something to strive for. Something in a similar vein is the popular person dating the unpopular person. It's almost always the popular boy lowering his standards to date the unpopular girl. We'll talk about that in a minute. Pretty in Pink, Duff. Like, the girl's the one that's undateable, obviously. Playboy Settles Down. This is a good one. This one really hammers home the idea of the one. Crazy Stupid Love, Hitch, 2 Weeks Notice are all depictions of men that sleep around being tamed. Contract relationship. This trope involves one character using another character knowingly or not isn't really the point. One character has all the control. The proposal, no hard feelings, do a great role reversal where the woman is in charge, and Failure to Launch I love because it has both of them kind of playing each other. That's great. It's just a good movie. Now, its appeal and problems as a genre. Now, the genre of romantic comedies has a lot of appeal. A few of them set standards for men, like men, listening to their partners, doing nice things for them, unrealistic things that women want. There's this idea that these big romantic gestures and declarations that we find appealing because that's what we want. We want someone to choose us, to love us, to scream it from the rooftops. Really, we just want you to pay attention. It's really not that hard. Now, the problems with the genre as a whole are many and have been well documented and picked apart and criticized by many people. The first being that most rom-coms, especially in the 90s, relied really heavily on gender stereotypes. And that's fine. I think an archetypal structure for the most part is not a bad thing. I do think it's lazy. As a writer, I think you're not trying at all. But it also makes it very clear to the audience, and that's why these are, I'm going to say, low intelligence level kind of movies. There's no nuance. You don't have to think about it. There's no hidden message. You just watch it and it is what it is. As with all problematic writing, comic books, a lot of fantasy, and rom-coms, they are mostly written by men. Now, it's hard to write something that properly depicts women and what they want and actually relates to them without any women in the writing room.
I hate it. I hate the way you're always right. I hate it when you lie. I hate it when you make me laugh. Even worse when you make me cry. I hate it when you're not around and the fact that you didn't call. But mostly I hate the way I don't hate you. Not even close. Not even a little bit. Not even at all.
Though rom-coms are aimed at women, a lot of them play into male fantasies. The nerdy, unattractive, nice guy ends up with the girl that's way too hot for him and way too good for him in just about every other aspect of life. She's out of my league, just friends, knocked up, I love you, Beth Cooper. I could go on and on and on and on and on. That is one of the most common things in rom-coms. It's for us, but either the popular boy is lowering his standards to date the unpopular or ugly girl. Except for she's not ugly. She's hot. She's just wearing glasses. Thanks for the message. Um, but this nerdy waste of space incel dude magically gets the hot girl. Why? Because he's nice? Who are these movies for? Toxicity of all kinds plays a major role in too many plots and in too many rom-coms. Stalking as a means of love is a role in many relationship stories. How I Met Your Mother, The Notebook. So if there are this many problems with rom-coms, why do women watch them? Well, some of them are sweet, some of them are realistic, and some of them might be more romantic than comedy, allowing women to relate far more heavily into the material. So what are some innocent, somewhat perfect rom-coms that are safe to watch? She's the Man, The Princess Diaries 2, Sydney White, 27 Dresses. 10 Things I Hate About You. 10 Things I Hate About You is not unproblematic, but it is awesome. I strive to be Kat Stratford every day. Now, I think it's worth talking about the difference between a romantic movie and a romantic comedy. Now, the difference is pretty obvious. It's the comedy part, right? But even without that part, like, even in a lot of rom-coms, the comedy part kind of feels like an afterthought. He's just, I can't talk. He's just not that into you. For the most part, that movie, I just yell at the men because they all suck. And a lot of rom-coms actually have a lot of really heavy emotions, which is why I believe that from a filmmaking and a screenwriting standpoint, there really isn't a lot of differences between a romantic movie and a romantic comedy. Now, yes, Gone with the Wind, A Walk to Remember, The Notebook all feel a little different than movies like 27 Dresses and Crazy Stupid Love. However, I think it's more in the way that they are shot. The cinematography feels different. There's a feeling of intensity and a sense of higher stakes in purely romantic movies. I mean, you don't know if they're going to end up together in a romantic movie. And Affair to Remember, most Nicholas Sparks movies do not have a happy ending. Whereas with romantic comedies, there's always a happy ending. So there's a source of, romantic movies are more a source of heartfelt emotion, and romantic comedies are more a source of comfort and relaxation. I don't think either of those things are wrong. Rom-coms are often referred to as chick flicks as they are typically marketed to women. However, I think men should take some notes from a few of these. Now, short list of my favorite romantic movies and romantic comedies: 27 Dresses, 10 Things I Hate About You, A Walk to Remember, Princess Diaries 2, are all really great films to watch for both, and really any Nicholas Sparks movie. I go through a like Nicholas Sparks wave every couple of years because his movies really are just heart-wrenching and beautiful, even if they're heartbreaking at the same time. But yeah, that's your history on romantic comedies or romantic movies, however you want to see it. Next we will be doing horror films.